experience of money as being scarce is an artifact of the money system. In a properly run monetary system, there will be no scarcity of money.
There's not enough to go around and someone somewhere is always going to be left out gives us this very difficult and unfortunate permission to leave people out. Because if someone's always going to be left out, then it's your job and my job to accumulate more than we possibly could ever use or need to distance ourselves from ever being one of those poor people who gets left out.
At the point of view of the corporation, getting more and more and more, that is driven in part by greed, in part by the dynamic of trying to get profits, capitalism, but it's also driven by fear. Because if you don't do it, if you can't expand faster than the next corporation, they will get research money, and they will get marketing money, and they will beat you and may drive you out of the game.
You're not quite as efficient in this plant as you ought to be by our calculations. This is the banker speaking. And so therefore, we're going to either raise the cost of your credit and drive you to do bad things to your workers or to your community or to the environment in order to boost that return and boost your stock price. And we will lend to you under those terms only.
The nice way of saying it is nice guys finish last. If you're callous to the effects on others, you have a potential to rise. The odds are that you can compete your way up. If you care and are socially concerned about others, you're at a tremendous disadvantage. So I think the competitive dynamic that we have does sort of weed out a set of people for success. But I would say that what it weeds out for success is not competence, not creativity, not intelligence, but callousness far more often.
Well, I think if you look at how economies actually function, they function with both competition and cooperation. And so I think both can coexist. We have probably leaned more toward competition, and I think we could use more cooperation. But I think either one in its extreme can be dysfunctional.
Competition does have its place in urging us to our highest level of performance and fulfillment. But health is dependent on cooperation. We don't have the liver competing with the heart for blood and for nutrients. There is this inherent cooperation that leads to the health of the entire entity.
The nature to which people are able to be social, civilized, sympathetic, is quite amazing, and it's in contradiction to the nature of the money.
It's interesting that anybody, whether you're a man or a woman, whether you're aggressive naturally or very sweet and cooperative naturally, if you're going to have to make the money to live, I make you a prediction. You're going to have to fight for it. You're going to have to compete for it. Is that in nature out there? Is that the world that is that way? Or is it the money system that's between us and the world that is that way? I make the second claim.
A lot of diversity here. We're starting to see a whole different array of plants come into being. So there's some lupins here. There's some strawberry, small wild strawberry. This broom with the yellow blooms on it. This is a nitrogen fixer and is stabilizing these slopes. And decomposters here, they're harvesting that broom.
So what are these ants doing for the whole situation?
Well, basically they're breaking carbon down. They're taking carbon, gathering it together, and breaking it down. You got a great part of the Umbellifera family. This is yarrow. They're deep-rooted, so they bring a lot of minerals up from the parent material. They'll go below this sand and dig into more than silica to bring up things to the surface that'll nourish these other plants. So you got a lot of complexity here. A lot of plants cooperating with each other to try and create an ecosystem that stabilizes this shifting sand surface here.
Ecosystems are based much more on cooperation than they are on competition. We tend to deify cutthroat competition. And there is some competition in nature, but there's much more cooperation.
Species move from competition to cooperation because they discover the economic value of cooperating. It is cheaper, more efficient. All you have to do is look at our Pentagon budget and see that a tiny fraction of it would really develop countries that we've been leveling instead. Very much more cost effective to make friends of them than it is to keep them as enemies.
We have 8 billion people on the planet. There's 1 billion of those that are happy to work but can't. There are no jobs for them.
Some would argue that these people are unemployed because they lack skills or because they don't want to work. And that may be true in a few cases, but in the vast majority, that's not the reason why they're impoverished. The reason why they're impoverished is because you have this scarcity of money.
The first question I asked is, am I going to be stuck being a janitor forever? And they were like, oh no, there's all kinds of chance for advancement. You could go to calling. We've got data entry. You've got all kinds of computer skills. And then 4 months passed, and I addressed it again and got a different story. It was like I had no value. My self-esteem was going down because I can do more than just clean bingo tables and clean toilets.
If you have an economy which is generating only a limited number of good jobs, are you surprised that parents feel it's really important to teach their kids how to compete on every level? They want their kids to get those jobs. You know, another kind of response would be to get together and say, hey, wait a second, there's a problem with the structure here. But, you know, we have a very individualistic response to the problem.
At the time of the Civil War in the United States, which is a very interesting turning point, midway in the Industrial Revolution, industrial rebuilding of the United States, slavery in the South was obviously condemned, but the counter-argument was something they called wage slavery. And what did that mean? It meant that you had no protection. You could be fired at will without a job. You could be thrown out on the street, and you were a wage slave was the term.
13th Amendment, which says you cannot treat a human being as a commodity for buying and selling. And the new economics is you can no longer buy or sell labor, but you can rent it. So the wage is you're renting somebody.
The word job was invented in the industrial age in England. It didn't exist before. And it describes a pile of things that one does for money. Work is a very, very old concept. And work is something you do because you're passionate about, or because you're good at it, or because that's what you love doing. A job is specifically something you do for pay. Pay in national money, to be precise.
Tell me, why are you interested in this job?
I need a steady job, Mr. Wiley, with a chance to go places.
People like Woodrow Wilson and Abraham Lincoln said that if America became that sort of society, the society in which everyone became, the vast majority became wage laborers or wage slavery as they used to call it, we would lose the freedoms that made America great.
If you, say, were in such conditions of duress, that you just couldn't survive except by